Hello everybody. We are now down here in the barn again. It's cold out. I'm just getting over a cold. That's why I have a balaclava so I can just kind of keep healthy. What I'm trying to do now is this plate I put right here, as you can see. I just tacked it in, just rough cut it. It's not really what I wanted, but it just gave me enough just to throw this, shit cage in here. What I got to do now is I got to take off this weld, this weld, this weld, and there's all tack weld down here. What I'm going to do is turn it and keep it a 45-degree angle. And the main thing what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to solve a couple things. What it is as in when this thing shifts back and forth, because the pan twists and torques, what I want to do is make it just a straight gusset right here. And it's going to be more so onto this portion, going to be more so onto here, this portion will be more so onto here. And what it will do will be, it'll actually stiffen up the actual, almost want to call it a transom, but this floor pan, just to make it from not shifting. Now we will have a bar from the front part of the cage to here, but I also want to put in a bar underneath here, so I have a pole to jack it. Let me bring this around. Take a look. This is the outside of the car. Right here is the support from the original Coupe GT. This is the 4000. As you can see, this is off-centered. I just did this just to stabilize the car. That's all. And I've been cutting this back. And what I got to do is cut this mount out because this is just dead weight right here. Take this portion and fill in this gap right here at a 45-degree angle both sides. And let's see if we can look out here. See right here? It'll fill in this gap right here, and I'll weld it all onto here. This, we'll go backwards. This, there's just like two tacks up inside here, two pinch welds. I'll cut this, and move it straight over to here. I'm not sure about having, if I don't move this over, I'm almost thinking about building a box section right here and having the bar come out, but it might interfere with the brake ducts going into the wheel wells. Not really sure yet how I want to do this. The main thing is getting this thing turned around and cut and put into position right here, and that's the next thing we're going to do. This, it's just there for stabilization. The cage is protecting from rollover. This all has to be welded. The outer sills of the Coupe GT have to be welded to the inner sill, or right here, the frame, what you possibly consider a frame rail, for the 4000 Quattro. Now, once we do that, we got to do the both sides, and then we have to fit the fenders, which means, I'm going to pull back here. I want to cut this down and get as close to the edge right here. Bring this in enough so when the fiberglass I'm going to trim the fiberglass to meet this line to go inside, and that way it'll be actually flush with this. So we utilize a lot less filler. Plus, I want to keep this line instead of the line on the fender flare. The line on the fender flare is wavy as anything, so we'll keep that. We'll put it all in and put everything flush, and just all you do is making a flange in the back and for it to rest. So when you pinch it down, use very little filler inside, less chance of cracking. That's the main goal. So let's get on to it, and I'll start grinding this off. As you can see, I recycled my my Guinness boxes. So, and if you want the true cardboard aided design, go to what's it, Broken Motorsports. Those guys know what they're doing. They do a really good job. Me, I'm just just a hillbilly trying to make do with what he got sitting in the trash pile. have you ever heard of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Well, this is the Hillbilly's Guide to Recycling. That's all it is. And hopefully I can, I'm going to do a little bit more trimming on this. Then I'll transfer it to that and I'll see if it'll fit. Okay, there it is. Look at this. Well, it's kind of a fit. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. Right here, we're probably going to have to fill it in. But I have it pretty much all squared away with this corner. And that corner, if you take a look at the sides, they're virtually the same but a mirror image. So, in order to be a mirror image, to save me a lot of time over there, is I took this, basically a mirror image, draw, I'll scribe it out, I'll cut it, that way it'll save me a lot of time when I fit it to it. Because this was a lot of, what you don't see off camera is a lot of grinding. So what I have this plate now, actually the cage actually sits fully on this, both sides, even though this is a little bit off here and in back just a teeny bit off, but when you weld it, it'll look like it's actually stationary on this. Now, the reason why I have, I'm not too worried about this because I am going to plane it is because of these. This is the door off one of the cages that I took out. That right there, you can't see it, but it's actually on the front part of the hoop. This, I'm going to try and go down as far as I can, so it gives me plenty of room to cut off. And where I'm probably like on right here, because I want it to, this bar, I want it to be right here. That way, when this is plated, I can weld this bar all the way on. It'll be tight to the sill. This thing will be right down here on the, it'll be pretty good for when if you hit something like, in a parking lot or whatever you're going to do with this car. This car is not going to be a competition car per se, just a rallycross parking lot, go out and mess around and stuff. I mean, nothing really driven in super anger. And I don't think this cage would pass any tech for super anger stuff. It probably would, looking at a lot of the stuff that's actually passed in the long wilds of rally. But this one, it's a pieced together cage. It's pretty much what you're looking at is a free cage, and it's stuff that I recycle. It's hillbilly recycling, like I said before. And I want this thing completely done to make it look right. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the vise. I'll cut this out, start fitting it over there, and after this is cut and grinded and welded in, we're going to start working on the jacking points here. Figure out what we're going to do with the support brace, and then we're going to start fitting the rear fenders because I want to get that all squared away. And plus, cut out the mounts. We've got to cut out this rust right here, cut out the rust right there. Find any more rust that we have kicking around. Any mounts that we have that I don't think we're going to use. I mean, like stuff like this right here. This is a mount, or this is actually just a clip they used to put in. They welded in to put the wiring harness. I might even just use that. Put a grommet right there. I'll use the up top as a portion where you put the grommets. But we're trying to, this is oversized, but it's what I have. I'm recycling it. I'm not throwing it away, and it doesn't have any. They're not using tons of energy to actually to remelt it down. I'm actually using it for something, and hopefully, this will actually be something that people will like to look at. You don't know. I mean, most people will laugh at me and say, "What are you doing?" But I think I think it's going to be kind of neat. It might be useless static display, but it'll sound cool. Let me move on to that, or actually, let me go do this. And next time, the next shot you're going to see is we're going to try and figure out to do the jacking points, then the fenders right here. Okay, let me just cut off of this segment. Well, see, I should follow that. Just take out the dark stuff, and we'll be all done. Well, it's fully on the plate. It's pretty much fitted in. or fitted. That way I'm just going to tack it, both of these just tack onto the roll cage just to let it suspend there. And then I'll get to work on fitting the fenders, then the jacking points. Before I do all this, before I weld it all up, I'm going to sandblast everything. Just sandblast all the edges so I can, and all the, around the cages and all that stuff, where I can get a decent weld. But I want to get it done first and do sandblasting all at one shot. And that's it. So I can just take the grinder, zip it off if I need to move it or change it. I'm going to go over there and do that one. Take a look at all that. I mean, we got the Grand Canyon right here, but that doesn't matter. It's just tacked in. I'm probably gonna recut it and put it back and move it back. But what the thing is, what I want to try and do, this is for the old seat belts. I want to cut this off so it gives me access to under here. So when I go to plate, I'm going to plate from there down to here. The rod is going to come out, and that's going to be my jacking point. I think that might be okay, but what we have to do here first is start cleaning up all the stuff with the grinder, of course. We have to cut all this out. This right here is the jacking point for the Audi. And like I said before, I just tacked that on just to give it a reference, just a stable reference for when I did the top of the cage. I'm going to take this out, take that out. This right here is for the trunk release. It's spot welded in. And I was going to just take this off, but it's going to have to be cut out also. Now we'll get rid of this. And then we have to start in figuring out how we're going to set the fenders. Because once this is in order to do the jacking points for when you put, stick in like, the old Beetle jack basically, you stick that in. If you want to be here, it's got to be plated up into the cage and down. So the whole thing can be lifted up. I'm thinking about running a bar from here down to here for when I have, this is the tubing that I'm going to have. Do it one hand. This tubing is going to be the receiver for the square Beetle jack, because that's what they use. You can Ford used the round one, at least on a lot of the cars, and the earlier ones for the Audis used the square one. And they used a Beetle jack, and they called it a quick lift jack, but that's all it was. And this is pretty much, it looks like it. Am I ever going to use it? Yeah, probably not, but it'll look neat. So what I have to do first is cut this off, cut that off. That way it gives me access so I can fill in the gaps of the Grand Canyon over here. Cut this so I can bring this all down so we can start fitting the fender. What we have to do is find out where the actual arch starts on the fender flare. We'll go through that here in just a bit. So let me just get out the grinder. Let's just cut this out, cut that, and we'll just get that squared away. Well, I knocked the jacking point off. You can take a look. I've never seen a jacking point held on with rust and Bondo, because this is old Bondo. Isn't that interesting? Well, hey, I guess that's it. Yeah, you always find new things. Well, we are now here with the fender on it. And if you take a look, see, doesn't that look mint? But when you look underneath, it's a hunk of shit. So we got to make it not be a hunk of shit. All right. Whenever I fitted fiberglass fenders, this is the first time I ever fitted, these cool wheels fenders. So or quarters, or whatever you want to call them. Now, what we have to do is back here, I'm going to fit it first and fit it to the tail light. Now, if you take a look at, I'll bring it over here. If you take a look at all the Sport Quattros, because it's basically the same thing, this right here should be actually level with this metal piece. So I'm going to have to cut it down. What I did initially was I cut this portion right here out, which I have to weld back in again because I want more structure. Then what I have to do is, when I try and fit all of this stuff, hopefully you can see it, I usually take a hacksaw and just run down like this, just to, you basically taking the gap out and keeps, slowly fitting it. Now, if we go over here, this thing is, kind of wavy, but not bad. Actually, they're actually really decent fenders. They're just thin, and you can tell the mold shrunk because of just the way everything is. But we have to sit there and figure out where does this fender flare, or how far out here I can actually put this steel and bond it or mate it, but not have it look terrible with the fender flare. And it's gonna, the thing is, it starts to flare right out. This is going to have to be moved up into this line, and they'll be together. And see, this is heavier set than this. And this is, this is going to made it fairly well with just a straight overlap or underlapping patch or tabs. As you can see here, this top, I'm not sure if you can see down that line, but the line is definitely wavy. That's the reason why I want to use a steel line. And if I use a steel line, it actually gives it's a little crisper, and it's less likely you can tell the flare is actually not steel. Well, I'm not going to find that out until it's all on and it's been prepped. But this next part is going to be very time consuming because I'm going to have to cut the fender flare down here, all the way down here. I'm not going to cut the rocker. I'm going to cut it down to where I have this cut right here in the body. And that's where I'm going to fit it. And then the rockers will be done. But we also have to, to the point where this is all mated up and getting ready to bond. Then I'll build the, I'll build the jacking point out to here. And I think this is roughly where most of the jacking points were. I don't think they were back here, but I got to check on the pictures to see, because I can't remember exactly where it was. You wanted to get as close to the wheel as possible, because when you lose a piece of suspension, it's on the ground, you need to jack it up. And the jack, you still have to have this much distance from the ground up. So this goes in, jack it up, put the wheel on, or try and fix whatever you broke. Okay, we are now at the moment of truth. What I'm going to do, cut this in. This is going to be my flange for the inside. So just going to cut it straight down right here, pretty much. Take this, move it inside, weld it to it. That'll be the flange. It's a lot harder than it looked, actually. The initial cut is good, but the only thing is it just sucks to do. So let me just get this going. Alright, there is my general pattern. And it's going to go like this, but I'm going to step it in a little bit more. So it's going to go right here. And this is where it's going to be pointed up to. It's like this, and this is where all the epoxy is going to be, and I'll pot rivet it. But that is pretty much what it's going to be. This is the flange for this. As you can see, this is just a little bit bigger, so I'm going to have to add an additional how can I put this? An additional spacer right here to build it up so this thing fits flush on this side with this mount. So that's how it's going to sit flush. This is going to be the backing plate for me to actually use pop rivets to put it on and all this other stuff. but it'll actually fit underneath, so I can use filler to build it up, and I can make a nice smooth transition. So let me just get another piece of filler plate. I'll put that on here. I'll just start grinding this stuff off, and we'll make it all right. We got the plate ground off. So it's gonna go right in here. I am basically just gonna clean up a bunch of the inside stuff of the insulation the guy put on here. Use these little wheels right here work pretty good. For just removing the junk that's on there, or the schmooge or spooge or whatever you want to call it. And I'll put this. I'll space it out a little bit just so I know I'm going to have plenty of room, and then I'm just going to tack it to it and, well, weld it to it. That way it's all going to fit. See, this is what it is butted up, and if I bring it back just a little bit, I got tons of room in here. That way I can use the filler to actually blend over, and the popper of it won't be proud. So, and it'll smooth out relatively nice. So let me just do that, and I'll blast it out. See, no? That shit that's on there actually makes it sit there. One thing, whenever you're trying to remove this, use a respirator. This guy used fiberglass insulation, and I just noticed when I just did this, it started to spray all over the place. So use a respirator, because this stuff is, be very careful with it, because it's just nasty. Well, gotta wait till the dust settles, and we'll do a little bit of welding. Now, we have the tab that we cut and cleaned up on here. I also have pieces of metal. It's pretty much like 3 times the thickness of sheet metal. What I did is I looked at the fiberglass to see how thick it was, and what it was, so you can sit there and see this. This is what the flange is going to be, and if you put this on top of that, that entire width, because you're also buttoning it up to the actual body, is pretty much just a shade over the width of the fiberglass is what I want. So I took a bunch of these, I put them inside here to space everything out. Now I just have to take the welder and tack it in. And one of the things, you're probably going to say, you're going to weld the whole thing? No, just tack it, because when I put the fiberglass panel on, I'm going to use panel bond. And the panel bond, I'm going to, really gloop it all inside there. And then when I put it all to it, pop rivet it, and when it dries, it's going to be really, really strong. Same thing up here is what I'm going to do, but I'll show you here that. So let me just give a quick weld to this, and I'll show you what I'm going to do up top. Okay. We have this flange set. This flange needs to be put in. Spacers go underneath. Marked out where all the holes are going to be. I got tons of room either way, so they don't be exact. When just mark like that. When the only thing that I want really is where this line is. I want the spacer to be flush with the ridge. So when the panel goes on, it'll fit underneath, and it won't have, and the spacer won't. I want it to grind the spacer off in order for it to fit. Now that I've done that, I can pull this panel off. Only thing I'm doing is I'm going to clean exactly where, that's the reason why I marked everything. I just want to clean only where the holes are going to be, on how the spices are going to be welded on. Then I'll just tack weld them in, or punch weld, or whatever you want to call it. Let me get on that. Alright, well, I'll let these all cool down. I'll grind them all off, grind them flush. And then we'll get this flange on. So, do the bolts. Boom, we're in. Well, we ground them all flush, just so we keep the same standard height. Now, what I'm going to do is line the thing back up, make sure all the holes are supposed to be where they're supposed to be, or all the tabs will. And let's see, we'll line up. Pretty close. They're all pretty much there. So now I just have to make the flanges. Go over here. Hopefully that's a good thing. Yeah, we got that. And let's. See, the main thing is not to have the tab into where the panel's going to mount. Well, I think we're ready to just do some tacking. Because what I'm going to do is just tack, and I'm going to start moving this stuff down. The main thing is that it's all. I need to have the tabs basically flush with this. There we go. Okay, that looks better. Let me do it. Here we go. There it is. They're all. And when the panel bond gets up inside there and up inside here, it'll actually make a really nice locking panel. But we got it. It's pretty much there. There's enough. I mean, right here, I have to cut down with a grinder a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with that. As you can see, go all the way over here. Now I got to go do this side. All right, now that we got the flanges done, we are on to the final bit of this episode. And, hope I feel better next time. What it is I have all this set up right here. I need to cut this off and just trim it so it fits this. I just did a quick welded on that, and you didn't need to see that. But I need to get this thing done. Now, always when you're messing around with fiberglass, always wear a mask. Right now, it's just like I have to go get mine, and I'll cut this, and we will fit it. I want it, just what I'm trying to do is to get the best transition I can into the metal bodywork. And what I'm going to do is also going to weld tabs on the other side. Or I should probably weld tabs right here and right here, just so I can bolt that to it. Not sure what I'm going to do down here yet. That'll probably be for after I put the bumper on. I'm not really sure, but when I put the bumper on, then I'll do the bottom. But the biggest thing is getting this thing squared away to where I can actually fit it and it actually look nice. And actually, you can just, do this. So let me just zip this off and do it. Do it good. I don't want to take my mask off just because there's so much fiberglass in the air. I got this pretty much boiled down, or pretty much in a position where this lines up right here. And that line down there lines up. It's not going to be perfect. I'll probably have to use filler. But what I have right now is enough to, I can now cut this body all the way down and fit it to the tabs, because this is going to have to be cut also right here, Let me see if I can get this over here. This is going to have to be cut right here, but I want to cut this down with the air grinder, and I'll cut that so I can mate it all in and start work on the other side. But this is the main crux, as you can see right down here. Trying to get it as close as I can. This is probably going to have to be cut off right here, because I'll lay a straight edge across. This is about the closest thing, but I'll lay a straight edge across, and I'll be right, pretty much cut right there, and probably use some filler, or I'll use body adhesive to get it in there, cut it, then a little bit of filler to dress it on top, just so it smooths out the line. This is pretty much, and also I don't really know how bent this is either, but this is okay. This kind of curves in, but that thing's lined up. Best of, best I can do is this, or best it'll allow it me to do will be this. Then I'll just get on with the rest of it. So this is pretty much the last. This is cuts it for this episode. I got to go do the other side, but I want to cut this off and just put this in on the flanges, and we'll get this thing going. So sorry for not taking my mask off. Too much fiberglass in the air. Talk to you later. Bye.